Hi class, so my presentation is on the black market fur and wildlife trade. My name is Katie, and I just have a trigger warning for this because there's distressed animals, animal pelts, and other parts. So just letting you know if it makes you uncomfortable. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so what's happening? What's going on? So fur and animal parts are being collected and sold illegally internationally. They are often endangered species, many oftentimes, and this legality is decided by CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species and Wild Fauna and Flora. It's a convention that was agreed upon. It establishes regulations or bans on international trade, and currently there are 170 party countries, and over 38,000 trade species that are being regulated by them. This trade is one of the most profitable sectors. They make billions per year, which I'll get into a little later. And there's very limited information because it's the black market trade, right? They don't want a whole lot being posted about it. So anyway, let's continue. Okay, so initially I was just doing this on the fur trade, but I had to expand it a bit because it was really hard to find information, like factual information on the black market fur trade alone. Just because furs are also intertwined with the overall illegal wildlife trade, and because the top producers of pelts and furs, a lot of the times it's still legal right now. There's not many places that have it banned, which I will actually bring up a little later. And the fur farms that produce the pelts, being like foxes, minks, rabbit, raccoon dogs, are still legal practices in the highest producing countries, which are European countries. At the top we have Finland and Sweden, and China's up there as well. The US also produces fur, but is also more of an importer. So yeah. Alright, so why do we care? Why should our class care? This wildlife trade actually negatively and disproportionately affects local and indigenous peoples. Um, it affects their livelihoods and economics of the people impacted, and it reduces and degrades community space, resources, and safety. For example, in Africa, the Alliance of Indigenous Peoples of the Congo Basin Forest highlighted how indigenous peoples were often drawn into illicit activity by those higher up the chain because of their special skills and knowledge about the ones most targeted by enforcement. Due to the elusiveness of the true criminals that are hard to pin down, and this impacts them it puts pressure on the species that affect the biodiversity and habitat usage for those species that local communities rely on for their livelihoods and their food. Remote forest peoples who have few or no alternatives are driven further into poverty. So it's very negatively affecting them, which is very important for us to know about. All right, this is kind of an impact quote I wanted to include. It was very impactful for me. It reads, quote, "The corruption and money that is generated just destroys the working people and the tribal and indigenous populations in these areas." Quote, "and they are just decimated in some places like Peru and Ecuador." And this is from HSI Harbin. So I just wanted to include that as a kind of more background for what's going on and hear it from someone else. Alright, so key issues. There are many listed here. And it's going to be kind of a long slide for me to talk about. So there are effects to the local and indigenous communities, as we saw in the previous couple slides. This also includes the introduction of invasive species and incidental killing of non-target species, with like animal traps that harm and kill other species that they aren't directly hunting for. It is extremely profitable. This is actually, according to ICE, the illegal wildlife trade brings in profits of, I've seen numbers between 7.8 to upwards 20 billion per year. The trade is the fourth largest profitable sector after narcotics, human trafficking, and counterfeit products. It is difficult to enforce policy because of the corruption. So there's a lot of corruption going on where intergovernmental, like where officials and court judges are easily bribed, so nothing really changes. Also, the elusiveness of criminals make it difficult to find and capture them. The World Wildlife Fund puts it this way, quote, "The poachers, often poor locals, are usually the only ones caught, leaving the real masterminds and their networks safe and operational with the ability to strike again." So this is classic, like, people at the top and then all of the poor people at the bottom that are doing the actual hard work, right? And so, they're not the ones that are going to get in trouble. And then it actually also negatively impacts climate change. So fur farms are high energy consumers, as well as producing large carbon footprints, where a single mink coat requires over 6,000 pounds of feed. And then there's also energy consumption we have to worry about during transportation across the world. For the wildlife trade specifically, biodiversity and habitat loss can cause reductions in carbon storage and increased emissions, as well as undermining climate change mitigation and adaptation measures. So yeah, same thing for biodiversity loss and endangered species because of just being exploited so much. Think about like tigers and right now rhinos for their horns, and how pangolins are being extremely exploited right now. And then there's also a problem of toxins in fur and pollutions from that and other diseases they have. So there's toxins like formaldehyde, chromium, and these things are linked to like leukemias, cancers, and ammonia that are applied to the pelts to prevent biodegradation. And then fur processors are frequently fined for this releasing the toxic waste into the environment that degrades the local ecosystems. And then there are, unfortunately, this is interesting to find out, there are no authoritative bodies that regulate or monitor toxins in fur production. The fur trade waste contains high concentrations of nitrogen and phosphorus, which the trade adds 1,000 tons of phosphorus into the environment each year. And then not only that, but the waste from the animals along with their disposal contributes to air pollution because incineration is their main method. So it's very, there's all these problems with it, All right, so now I'm going to get into some solutions and what we can do as students. All right, so for current solutions, we have CITES. They decide in each of their appendices which animals are protected with that are threatened with extinction, and the circumstances that they're able to be traded or transported, if at all, where many of them are banned. These countries sign on, parties agree to these terms, and they are supposed to abide by these regulations. So everyone's on the same page, and they're trying to get more parties to agree to them. There are organization efforts and collaborations. So for example, the World Wildlife Fund provides technical and scientific advice to CITES. World Wildlife Fund and Traffic research illegal wildlife trade routes, the effects of wildlife trade on particular species and deficiencies in wildlife trade laws. Some governments also have initiatives and efforts of their own to combat the trade. World Wildlife Fund is supporting CITES, program development, workshops, the creation of regulations, and they also assist enforcement efforts and fund anti-poaching brigades. There's also a lot of local efforts, so and like in the field contact and education. So these efforts are critical for success. Approaching impacted people on a local level increases the likelihood of being heard out and convincing them, compared to like a sudden new rule, right, with no explanation or context. They're not gonna listen to you. And then supporting local sustainable products and practices further discourages illegal practices. There are also fur ban legislation pending. So far, only Israel has banned fur sales as far as countries go. And California is the only state, along with 12 towns and cities, that have also banned fur sales. So there's a lot to be done to ban fur sales in other countries. Many countries have like regulations and really strict restrictions on fur farms and things like that, and importation, exportation, but not full-on bans of sale in all species. Some countries, like Bulgaria, have pending legislation on tighter restrictions or bans. Many countries that have passed restrictive legislation have led to the closure of fur farms. And then additionally, some countries' bans are yet to be enacted. They have like 5 to 10 year or whatever adjustment periods for them to switch over to a different business or something else. And then what's next? Like, what should we do next? So further legislation and enforcement, I find is probably important. So like laws and policies that prohibit sales and importation of furs, and enforcement support for inspecting the sources of furs and combating corruption within the wildlife trade enforcement, requiring stricter guidelines of even like animal sanctuaries here in the U.S. Would help, which are surprisingly legal, because in the ones that are not good, because lax animal laws in some states that allow people to obtain exotic pets. And then increase education and redirection with incentives. So this is something that I'm interested in personally, because one of the biggest issues with highly profitable illegal businesses is that you can't simply tell them to stop. You have to provide something else, so it's beneficial for them to not do it. To promote, so it's important to like promote job creation and job security in other fields, to like shift instead of completely stop and do something else. And one of the things that people can do is have those people involved switch sides and work for the good organizations by being informants, helping them with convincing locals, and which can be paired with like monetary incentives. And then just more on the ground effort of also doing this and educating people in person in their own, communities. So yeah. All right, so what can we do as students, right? So we can talk all day about what the government should do, what international things need to be organized, but what can we do from our smaller level as students? First and foremost, don't buy fur, and educate your friends, your family, right? You can sign petitions for legislative action, which in the next slide I have some links for that. You can donate to reputable organizations, like the World Wildlife Fund, or volunteer. And then don't post selfies or like contact photos with sensitive animals. This promotes the idea of domesticating wild animals, which perpetuates the wildlife trade because a lot of it's online. And you can't tell from a photo, like, are the animals treated safe, or are they safe? Are they treated properly? Are they healthy? Think about the tiger palace in Thailand, right? Those tigers were in cages and being killed for tourism, for photos of people. And then, so like during my time at Ashia, the cheetah conservation, yeah, I took photos with the resident cats that have been there a really long time and are friendly with people, but they're treated very well behind fences, and I have never and will never publicly post them. So that's a big difference. Because I know people won't be able to tell what's going on, but I can show my personal life, but I'm not gonna post that. So it's also really important. It's kind of exploitative of them as well. So yeah, so the next slide we can have some links and I'll go over that. All right, so for this slide I have some petitions, some like links. So World Wildlife Fund is the first one. This is a pledge not to support the trade. And the second one is hashtag end the trade. This is for urging governments worldwide to end the trade. Like the illegal wildlife trade. And then the last one is UK Parliament to retain and extend bans. So yeah, feel free to check these ones out, or look into like World Wildlife Fund and the trade. Traffic is a really good place to look as well. So yeah, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much, and yeah, thank you.